the personnel you're closing out. So if you remember, we have several different categories for teaching effectiveness. You will click the link, and it will ask you, do you want to make a copy? You'll make a copy of the document. It's spinning. Now, the process has this many layers because what generally happens is if we send you a Google Doc, somebody inadvertently changes it. So we've sent it to you this way so that you actually have to make a copy of it each time you need it. Now, let me show you a trick. Once you've made one copy of the closeout form, you don't always have to go back to that link. If you go here to your drive where the file is, and just say, make a copy, it makes a copy in the folder that you've created, and it will say copy of closeout instructions. So my suggestion is make a copy of that first document. Leaders, I want you to, because your process is the same for leadership, make a copy of that first document. Go on ahead and put it in a folder, and then make copies from that document. So you can go in and tell it to make a copy. Now, the other thing that I absolutely adore is that you can actually highlight this one. See, it's highlighted. And then the original, I don't want all of those, I just want the one. And this one. See, those two are highlighted. Tell it make a copy, and it makes a copy of how many things you have highlighted. So for those of you who have 15 people that have to be evaluated on full evaluation, make one copy, go ahead and download it from the link, then make another copy of that, then go in and tell it to make a copy of those two, and until you have enough. And that's really easier than going back to the link every time. Then you can just change the names on the document and keep moving. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Does that help?
Yes.
Everybody good? All right, leadership is the same way. For leadership effectiveness, you're going to go in and click the link for school-based or central office, and then you're also going to make a copy of the document, put that document in a folder, and then make the copies that you need. The folders need to be shared with educator effectiveness. If you don't remember to share it with educator effectiveness, share it with me. The best thing to do is make the folder, share it, and then go through your process, as opposed to trying to remember to share it at the end. Because then I have to call you and say, did you remember to share it? And you say, oh, I thought I did. And I don't have it. Everybody with me? All right. Going through my list. Talk about that. Observations. There are very few observations for leadership. Most of the schools have done some form of observations at some point. That's not right. And I can see a list of observations in my master file. But I see very few observations for leaders. Leaders, this year, everybody is on full evaluation cycle, as has been for several years. So everybody must have that minimum observations in the folder. When I say leaders, I'm talking about central office, because most of the principal leads, all the principal leads have done at least one observation on their principals. Principals who have APs, there are no observations for APs. We started the process in like October, November, and we determined that for the first semester, you needed a minimum of 1. But the second semester, you still needed a minimum of 2. So you need to make sure that you go in and put those observations in. My assumption is, you know how you do when you make assumptions. My assumption is you've been observing your AP all along the way. Pick a date of observable activities that you've already completed and fill out an observation form. You can't read will at this point is March. But you need to have an observation for last semester, and you need to have 2 for this semester. Central office leaders, the same applies. You have gone with your specialists to different trainings, you've gone with your specialists to different events, they presented. All of this has been going on all year long, and we've all been learning and growing. Create those observations. Please don't make anything up. I'm not giving you license to make anything up. I'm saying capture the information that's already happened and create those observations so that we can remain in compliance. Part of our process and part of our concern still over the years is process. Whether or not the process is being implemented and implemented to fidelity. And just because this group is implemented to fidelity, if the other 2 groups are not, then the conversation is skewed, and no longer can it be said that we are creating initiatives that have impact and are being implemented to fidelity. We're going to talk about that in a moment. I see someone trying to capture this information. Once we finish this presentation, I'm not leaving before I send you all those PowerPoints that I talked about today. Okay, so you're fine. Closeout dates. Classified evaluation, school level, your closeout is everybody's closeout is no earlier than April 1st. But classified evaluation at the school level should be completed by May 15th. Central office should be completed by June 15th. Teaching effectiveness, your closeout should be completed by May 24th. That should be the last day that the teachers are with you. Leadership school level to be completed by May 30th, central office by June 15th. What are your questions or concerns about the evaluation process? What are your questions or concerns about the links?
Dr. Neville,
Yes.
you said that if we have been going pretty much a side by side with the individual that we evaluate, we can capture that at this point and provide the score at this point, what they can use. Because it's all.
Okay, let me say it different, because I understand your question. Let's say you attended a training with someone and they were presented, then you capture that data. So it's not like you're going to capture a compilation of data. If you're capturing a compilation of data, don't tell me that and choose an appropriate date. I didn't answer your question.
You did, I guess it would be my concern that you could not give the person immediate feedback within the time frame. Then there was no room for that person to make improvement. Hence, they have a undesirable score, but we didn't follow the outline that we put in place, that within a certain number of days, we can have a conversation.
Dr. Bailey is absolutely correct. Dr. Bailey is absolutely correct. If we do what I just said, then you have, especially if the score is an undesirable score, then there was no room for improvement. The bottom line to that response is you are already non-compliant by not having the observations captured at the time of the observation. And there may be no way to recover from the fact that you are non-compliant. I'm not sure how to answer that. I'm just trying to create opportunities for us to capture the information so that we don't have to go backwards. If the situation is as was just described, you're going to have to put in place some other things. You're going to have to be very exact. Make sure that you have those follow-up conversations for your observations and then move forward. You guys put us in a really, really precarious position when you are just flat out of compliance. And when we try to create opportunities for you to get back in line, it creates opportunities, just like Dr. Bailey said. If there is no opportunity and room for growth, especially if the scores are bad, then there's kind of like nothing we can do. So I'm gonna stop talking about it at this point. Because I don't have any more options. My first option was to help you fix it, but if helping you fix it creates a bigger problem, you're gonna stay where you are. All I got. Questions or problems about the evaluation process, the evaluation closeout? Then all is well. I will make sure that I send that information to you as well. Mr. Rowland. Yes, sir.
Me?
Yes. You want to go on ahead and then I'll just follow back up after you? Yes. Because I'll be talking about another town campus. All right. There you go. Did you need the
Good morning. It is almost spring break. That's all y'all got? I almost want to keep going. I apologize for being late. I got the curse of 65. We get that at least once a week where we get stuck on 65. So I apologize. We're queuing up right now. Tom, I think, go forward. Keep going, keep going. Hang on. Go back. All right, so we started our book study and we're talking about principal and student achievement. One of the things that we did was we added into this, we gave you guys the reading strategies to implement as you're doing your PD with your staffs. We ask that you try to model and present your book studies, your PDs, your professional development, your faculty meetings in the same way that you're asking them to present in their classes. So we gave you the link to the readingquest.org. And one of the things that we were doing is we were trying to add some of those strategies in with this book study to model for you so that you could model in your faculty meetings so that your principals would have examples of modeling from you in the classroom. So as we started our tour and started visiting around and going to your faculty meetings, we saw that you guys were doing that. So this was not to insult or show that you weren't doing what you were supposed to do or indicate that you didn't know how to do it. This was providing evidence and examples for you so that you could set the expectation in your classrooms and with your teachers. So it's been about 4 or 5 months since we've last touched this. So I'm going to do a quick review as we go through, but they're asking me to be done today. So we're going to go kind of quickly. And when we get to the activities like Turn and Talk or Think, Pair, Share, or whatever it says on the slide, we're not going to do that, because we were doing that the first couple of times that we did it. And that's what really takes the time when you take 4 minutes to turn and talk or things like that, which that's the expectation that you should have with your people. So when you do a turn and talk, it is 5 minutes. It is a 5-minute activity. But for the sake of getting through the study today, we're not going to do those, and we're just going to push through. But if this is something that you do with your faculty, you build those time limits in, okay? So, we talked about the book study. It's called Principal and Student Achievement. Sorry. So we asked earlier that you write down in the notebook the things that we were doing, the turn and talk, the think, pair, share, talk with your partner. Because as you know, when you do a PLU, usually there's a written piece that you have to submit. So your notes can be that written piece. We're not going to ask for a formal summary. We're not going to ask for a paragraph or a paper on it. We're going to take your anecdotal notes. And so when we're talking about strengths and weaknesses and the things that you discuss, those notes that you're doing can be the evidence that you submit. Make sense? Do everything one time, share it multiple times. All right. What the principal does has an impact on achievement. So we put that Yoda quote up: do or do not, there is no try, period. If you don't do it, it ain't happening. It's you. Whether you like it or not, it's you. Whether you want to be blamed for it or not, it's you. Something happens in the school, it's you. When you get the good results back, it's you. When you get the bad ones back, it's you. So there is no, I don't know why we can't move it. It's you. Right? Because if you know a teacher's not doing what they're supposed to do and you let them, who is it?
It's
You. So there is no do or do not. Right? You either do it or you don't. There is no try. I tried, Bobby. I tried to make that teacher do you the boss. And we let you talk, we tell us you are, right? But either they do it or they don't. It's you. I can't make those kids come to school. What you do to the mother? Well, I thought about calling them. Okay, you thought about it, so you didn't do it. It's you. Right? So all that goes well is you. All that doesn't go well is you. As the principal, it's you. There's a positive relationship between the behavior of the principal and the achievement of the student. What are you doing right now? What are you doing there? What you doing? You in the class? You talk to the kids? You know the names? You build the relationships? Right? Do you only know the bad kids' names? You should spend some time with the bad ones, but you should spend some time with the good ones too. I hate when I'm in the mall and I come up like, oh Lord, there goes Joe Smith. Where do you know Joe Smith? He's in my office every single day. I can have a full conversation with Joe Smith because I spend all my time with Joe. You let the valedictorian come up, I don't even know who she is. Right? Make sure that what you're doing as a principal is having meaningful, relevant, and engaging impact on the child's life. Look at what they found out about high achieving schools. Look at the leadership. Look at the expectation. Is the climate safe and orderly? I'm afraid to come to school. So what do I care about ACT? I'm going to tell you, one of the things that blows me away the most negative thing that people say about APS is the behavior. That's really not what the issue is. When you come in, we have great management, right? I see some amazing things in the schools, management-wise. For 50, 60, 70-year-old buildings with 900 doors, you do an amazing job of checking them, right? I'm talking to somebody specific in here right now. I don't know if there's another way you can secure some of these facilities like you do. I don't know how in the world you're doing it. But you're doing everything that you can within the constraints of what you have to create that environment. Keep doing it. But are you focusing on learning? Right? Look at your resources, where you put your money. Don't buy the same program that you always bought because you're friends with the vendor and he gives steaks when y'all come to town. I said it. I like steaks too. Look at me. You think I don't eat? Doc, no comments. You break your lunch sometimes. Yes, ma'am, I eat. But if the program ain't working, quit buying it. Spend your money on resources that are going to help students. Right? Look at the instructional leadership part. Are you the leader or not? Just because you put on a good suit and got on some Stacey Adams this morning, does that make you a leader? Are you in the classroom? Are you a leader? I said Stacey Adams. I like him too. Bobby, sorry. Okay? But are you a leader? Are you leading the instruction? The reason why I built those activities in, I was not taking anything for granted. I love your wooden bow tie, but I had no clue if you were an instructional leader.
So I'm just gonna show you how to do the think, pair, share in the group so that you can go back and do it at your faculty meeting. And then when you go and observe the teacher, you can say, do it like we did in the meeting. I did that on purpose. Now, I'm flying through it today, so I'm not gonna be nice. I did that because I'm gonna go come in and ask you if you do, because y'all already hate state folks. So I said, we're gonna feed you anyway. You can eat if you like. If you don't know how to do it, eat. If you do, don't eat. But that's what that was for. All those traits we showed you, great principals have almost all of them. You're supposed to check off the ones that you feel like you have right now. Go back and look at your sheet. How many were checked? Then go talk to your principal lead and see what they say. If you're not scared, talk to them. See what they say about you. Check those 7 and then see what your principal lead said. Because real successful leaders are reflective and introspective. Did you hear me, Paul? I'm gonna pick on you, Bobby, because y'all the biggest. So if I pick on you, then I can say I pick on the 2 biggest. Right? Great leaders are reflective and introspective. What are you doing right? What are you doing wrong? Have you talked about it? Have you talked to somebody who's smarter than you about it? Are you aware of what you don't know? You know what hubris is? It's the inability to not know what you don't even know. You're so cocky and arrogant, you don't even know what you don't know, right? Hubris is the beginning of the downfall of all great societies. So if you think you're so great and you don't even know what you don't know, hang on. You be reflective and introspective. How many of those traits do you have? No question. Too far away. Look at your vision. Don't just have a vision, have a specific vision. Have you shared your vision with your stakeholders? How are you sharing it with your stakeholders? I put it in the book. It's in the book home when they signed for when I gave it to them. Okay. You honestly think that the population that you're serving stopped for a minute to read a handout that you gave the first day of school along with 900 other pieces of paper? That's what you really think. How are you sharing your vision with your folks? Look at the goals that you put in there. Are you sharing enthusiastically? Dr. Moore said we moving forward. I guess we are. Man, I can't believe. Okay, first of all, let's put it on the table right now. If you ever start off, Dr. Moore said, you messed up. That's like saying, I don't mean to tell you this. I'm not a racist, but. I'm not a sexist, but. I'm not a misogynist, but. I'm not a nationalist, but. As soon as you said but, yes, you are. So don't start off telling me about the vision based on what Dr. Moore says, unless you Malcolm X. Remember, he started everything off. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he was given honor to, right? Well, the great Dr. Moore says that's okay. That's all right if you started off like that. And she appreciates it too, right? But are you sharing the vision enthusiastically? You should be, because I'm not going to follow you if you're dead. Okay? Are the goals that you're setting promoting academic growth? Are you just writing goals down because your buddy's a principal and he wrote those goals down? Are those goals promoting growth? Everything you do should be working towards growth. Here was an activity. List 3. So, right, when you're doing this, because I'm going to give y'all this, you can just go write your ingredient. You can just write on this paper. And this will be your evidence that you turn in. Okay? A principal's strong focus on academics leads to student success. This can be expressed in 3 ways. 3 ways are in the book.
Your phone ringing.
What's that? Oh, Lord. Sorry. I'm like, y'all hear that? Blood pressure up. You know, sometimes I say you hear stuff when your blood pressure's up. Okay. High expectations of student learning. You were going to read that. Okay? Read that. Principals communicate to everyone in the school their expectations of high performance. Are you doing that? What's high performing in your school, Gary? I don't know. Better than what we were last year. We won the state last year. Right? We made it to the regions. Well, okay, that's high performing in athletics. But what's high performing in academics? What's high performing in culture? You remember that PBIS stuff? Are your numbers going down in discipline? That's high performing culture. Are your teachers fed and satisfied? Here's the worst thing that I did. I was the world's worst as a leader because I said, my wife mad at me too. I got up and came to work. I don't want to hear about that. My kid's sick too. I came to work. That might work okay with guys, but that does not work well with women, right? Education, 90+% women. You better care about what's going on at home. Yes, ma'am, I understand you may be sick. Yes, ma'am, you were going to be sick today. I got you. Yes, ma'am. You've got to be sensitive to those things, right? So what I was doing was I was having high expectations, but I wasn't taking into consideration the home life of the teacher. You got to be willing to do that too. Now that can't be your crutch every day, all day. I'm not going to perform in my classroom because I got some stuff going on at home. But if it happens every now and then, as a leader, still set the expectation, but care about the person. Right? That was my number one weakness. High expectations for student learning. Okay? High performance is based on providing loving, facilitating conditions that deliver learning. All right? Let me tell you something. Number one thing I don't like at MPS. Get over there, sit down, Johnny, with your little bad self. I can't stand the way you. You know what? That is not the language that they understand. That is the language they hear every day. I'm telling you right now, my mother was a yelling and screaming. Here's how we argue at my house. All right. Oh, yeah. Couldn't stand it when I was a kid, can't stand it now. Well, you're not communicating. So you yell it. I'm going to let you finish. You done? I will. Right? Why don't you do something for children that they have not had? If that is the language that they communicate in, why don't you communicate in a foreign language for them? Why don't you be nice and sweet? Why don't you teach them a foreign language, compassionate conversations? Right? So when I'm in those classrooms and they're yelling at little Johnny because he's bad, guess what? Little Jerry was bad too, and so is Julie. Right? That's called being a boy. But why don't you talk to them in a way different than what they're being talked to at home? Provide the conditions to be conducive to learning. It supports engagement. It energizes the child. Right? I'm not sure what that is, Tom. Can I hear that?
I'm working on it.
Okay. Self-confidence, responsibility, and I know all of y'all are doing this. I know when you feel good, when the school feels good, you feel good. I know when the school feels bad, you feel bad. I know you're doing this. I am not questioning a single one of you on this. You do not sign up in this business and for admin if you're not doing this. There's no way. I know you do this. You know how I know? Because when I talk to you about issues, you're so passionate. You're so fired up. You want to know what else can I do? My God, I'm bringing donuts. What can I do? Man, I'm picking them jokers up and they're walking into the school in this rain. What else can I do? I know you hold yourself accountable, right? But it's what you're doing, scientific, research-based, best practice, industry standards. Oh, you ain't heard that before? You ain't talked to Mary yet? All right, because she'll tell you. What's the research on this? By the way, this is the research. This book is. All this listed in there. This ain't just a picture one because you like a picture on cover. I do that too sometimes. Man, that's a cool cover. How many of you are willing to try anything to succeed? Raise your hand. 4, 5. God raise it fast enough. I don't believe it. How many of you feel as if you've already had? You've already tried as much as you could. You've already tried. So what does that mean now? You done? You gonna quit trying? Or you gonna try something else? Principals of high achieving schools never cloister in their office. You know what cloister means? No test. I'm gonna tell you. Locked down, sequestered, moved away, hidden, hiding. You don't hide. I'm gonna tell you right now, in case you didn't know, if you were the students and I were the principal, wherever the most kids are at one time, that's where you'd be, which is about right here. It's really about right here. In the middle of the group where the majority of the kids are all the time. If it's in the lunchroom, that's where I expect to see you. If it's in the hallway, that's where I expect to see you. If it's on the bus lot, that's where I expect to see you. Now you know. Do not say no one ever told you. I'm telling you, if that's where it is, Jay, that's where you are. Now, Bobby, y'all don't know. I'm going to tell you. Bobby got hurt. He was out. I just sat with him in the hospital. We told jokes. I tried to sneak in a dream, man. You wouldn't let me tell the truth. I tried. I said, what do you need from me, Bobby? I don't want your school. I don't want to be principal. Got the t-shirt. It's got a Kool-Aid stain on the belly button. I don't wear it anymore. But I will wear it for you. What do you need me to do? Roller, go by my school. What do you want me to do? I got a spot I stand in. Where's the spot? I knew where it was. It's in the middle of the hall. Well, when do you want me to do it? When the bell rang? Well, how many times do you want me to do it? Every time it rang. All right, Bobby. I went to his school. I stood in that spot. Amazing. You know how I know that was his spot? Because every kid walked by and said, good morning. How you doing? Hey, baby, how you doing? Good, good. Talking to a teacher. Another kid, hey, sir, how are you? Fine, hey. Talking to the teacher. Another kid, hey, sir, you Bobby's brother. No, sir, I'm better looking. Every single child that walked by me talked to me. You know how I knew that was Bobby's spot? Because they expected Bobby to be there. Everywhere the kids are is where you need to be. If you're not doing that, you're cloistered. Something wrong with it. Gary Hall got the little short legs, I can't even keep up with him. Forget about trying to keep up with Farms because he's in shape. Forget about it, right? Some of these ladies too, I don't even try. I feel bad because I'm behind them, but like, slow down, y'all. Get in the hallway. Wherever the kids are, that's where you be. So you're doing discipline. You look at your clock, it's 1 minute before the bell rings, you tell that irate mama, no, you don't do that, Roman, you don't do it. Yes, you do if you're focused on customer service. Ma'am, I understand that you're in the middle of cussing me out. Hang on 1 second. What you mean, hang on 1 second? I'll be right back. Miss Wilson, can you get her some more coffee? You send your secretary to get her some more coffee. The bell rings, you get up, you walk that hall, you talk to children, you get sticky notes from teachers, you go back and you talk to that crazy parent again. Yes, ma'am, yes, sir, I expect you to do that. Absolutely expect it. But that's rude to get up. Well, why are you worried about rude now? Have you measured your customer service? You have not measured your customer service, have you? I highly recommend you measure your customer service. Do a survey. You'll see what rude is. Right? Did you know, fact, Birmingham City Schools is undergoing a hospitality training for all of their phone answering staff. And I think it's some training Waldorf Astoria Hotel does. Birmingham City is going through it right now for the very same reason. Customer service. So don't act like you care about customer service. When the bell rings, get up and go get in that hallway. Bring coffee back. Finish your problem. I promise you, we'll be waiting on you. I promise you. All they want to be heard is anyway. Okay? So get out of that office. Have yourself trained to be where those kids are. Get out of that office. And you know what? I don't care what you tell us, because when we come to your office, we know you don't do it. You know how we know you don't do it? Because the kids go, ooh, I ain't seen you in 6 months. Is that a new suit? Oh, I like your hair. You look so pretty today. They just hug me on. Or they'll say, is this your replacement? Because they thought you'd been sick or you got fired. So you don't have to tell me you do it. Your kid's going to tell me every single time. Positive and supportive school climate. Read that. Anybody, go ahead. Like church. Anybody, everybody read it all together. And they said,
academic achievement is primary goal. Policies and procedures are instituted to achieve that goal.
all right, stop all you good Baptists. You see how y'all do that together? There is no way y'all was supposed to be on track like that. I love it. All right, look at that. Are y'all working together? Do you let the people that run the shops in your building help you create this? Right? You're foolish if you don't. You should be tired. You're doing too much. Right? You create a culture where that's the goal, but you let your smart people help you. Do our policies reflect what's best for kids, Munson? Do they? Don't you answer that. I'll answer it. Some of them don't. And if they don't help kids, that's what we should do to them. Throw them away. Why haven't you asked them to throw them away yet? You're so doggone smart. If our policies don't reflect what's best for kids, how come ain't nobody saying nothing? Shame on you. Is it good for kids? I'm removed from them. We're up here in the big house, right? Uh-oh, White House. We're in the house, right? So we don't know what's touching them. So if you think it's bad, why you ain't telling me? You're one of my leaders. Tell me the rules ain't working. Because if the policies don't work, that's what we should do, y'all. Say it together. Nobody's saying anything. Mr. Rowland, we should do dual enrollment for 9th grade. Why? Because it's great for kids. Okay. Let's do it. Why are we doing it 10th? Because somebody did it that way before. What are we doing dual enrollment for? What grade? 10th. What is the question? Not doing it 9th, are we? It should be 9th, right? If you got kids that want it, why are we doing it? Let those people change the policies and procedures so we can accomplish our goal, college and career ready. Then let's provide support to folks so that we can concentrate on that goal. Are you doing this? How do you know you're doing this? Right? We know it's true because y'all read it. But are you doing it? Is it working? If it's not working, why are you doing it? Because Roland told me to. Surveys. All right, y'all did surveys. Go back and look at your surveys. I was going to pull up some data, but we don't have time. I got to hurry. According to a survey, superintendents, 65% respond that the number one reason the principal loses their job is what? Anybody, take that one. Somebody. One body. Well, let's take HR. What do you think it is, HR? Number one reason people lose their jobs. Principals. Effort. Performance. Communication. Somebody actually had the nerve to say, I communicate. I am the best communicator this place has ever seen. I'm a communicator. I said, yeah. When was the last time you sent something out to your parents? Oh, I put it on Facebook. Okay. What about your non-English speakers? Huh? I said, you have non-English speakers, right? Yeah. You talked to Zena Shaw? Who? Okay. All right. You put it in writing? Did you mail it? You know, did you wait till you had something going on that kids like where you knew the parents would be there and then you told them because you knew the parents would be there? Are you being strategic in how you communicate? Here's the age-all, end-all, number one question. Have you even asked Tom if he could help you communicate? You got a whole department for that. Communication is the number one thing. Successful principals use communication to build relationships. Look at that. What are you doing to improve your oral and written communication? Now, you can probably tell me what your number one way of communicating is, but if I ask you for evidence, could you give it to me? Give me some evidence of how you communicated. And if you cannot bring it, then you did not do it. Right? I want to see proof of how you're doing this. Right? Do you value the ideas and the feedback that people give you, or do you get mad and pout? You don't have to like me at all. Because my next best job is already waiting on me. Y'all need to get that. Next best. I'm in 7 districts in 25 years. I moved up every level. Salary was commensurate with the move. Whether you think I'm successful or not. Right? Google me. You don't have to like me, Google me, right? What I'm telling you is, you know what helps me move forward? I take the feedback and apply it. You are terrible at speaking in front of people. You have no energy or passion. Ooh, let me work on that. You don't involve and engage the audience. Man, I make eye contact. I tap with people when they go by. I make sure you write stuff down, call you names, and give anecdotal stories. I use the feedback I get. Are you using the feedback you get? What are you doing to improve your listening skills? You know what? You're listening too hard right now. Stop listening so hard. Right? When people are talking to you, are you even paying attention? Or are you waiting like double Dutch? With your answer. I got my answer. I'm giving it to you right now. I'm so waiting for you to stop talking so I can tell you how smart I am. I'm waiting for you to shut up so I can tell you how smart I am. Fact! 7 school districts, there are more PhDs and EDDs in Montgomery Club than I've ever seen in my life. You know what that tells me? Y'all smart. You know what that makes me worried about? Y'all so smart, you may not be listening to your folks. That makes me worried. Are you listening? And when people tell you something that you value, that you made a leader, do you do it? There's nothing more powerful than taking the suggestion of a person in your building that you value and implementing it. And y'all haven't even figured this out yet. I'm so quick to give praise. Somebody said, oh my God, here he is, ladies and gentlemen, the cheerleader of the district. Yeah! Sure am. Don't you like cheerleaders? Not just because they're cute. Right? I remember being that big. I'm talking about the way you feel it. Yay! You know who your number one cheerleader was? Your mama. Don't you love mama? Yeah, I'm a cheerleader because I recognize and value the importance of uplifting my people. Tell them, you did a good job, sir. You don't have to ask me. Ask some of your colleagues. Have you ever been given personal praise for the job that you do in this district? Don't raise your hand. But if you have, you know it. You know you've got it, right? Are you listening? You need to be listening, right? Because sometimes you are not the smartest person in the room. And if you are, you're a bad decision maker. Don't tell your spouse I said that. It's not a reflection on them, right? Because if you're the smartest person in the room, you messed up. Because you should surround yourself with what? With what? With people that are smarter than you. You know why? Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me just a moment now. I apologize. There is a silver Chevrolet Cruze that's parked. If these are the steps, it's parked all the way out here. We need to have that car moved because maintenance needs to get to that area. It's any one of us.
Thomas, there's water back there. Please, do you mind, Thomas? Thank you. All right. No Chevy Cruze? No Chevy Cruze? Okay. All right, so if you're the smartest person in the room, shame on you. Yo, I'm going to tell you something right now. I love working with Ann Ward Moore. She makes you feel good in the meeting. She gets fired up. No, those hands stop moving. She's like, hold on, brother, hold on. That's my favorite. I love to make her say, hold on, brother. But she makes you feel good. You know why? Clearly, 40 plus years in this business, 12 years in one of the most successful large school districts in the state, more master's degrees per capita. Y'all do your homework? Don't listen to what folks say. Go do your homework. Huntsville, 12 years. Successful school district. She did 12 years. The average in Alabama is 2. She did 12. By the way, black female, did 12 in Huntsville. In a science community, she did 12. Right? You know what I love about her? She makes you feel good in the meeting. Oh, that's a good idea. Write that down, write that down. That's a good idea. She makes you feel good in the meeting. She will value the ideas and the input of those around. Are you doing that? People like working with people that do that. Are you doing that? You wonder why you're having turnovers because you're not valuing the people around you. Are you doing that? You wonder why people aren't buying in because you're not valuing the people around you. Are you doing that? Don't answer. Because all we got to do is ask them to tell us. Emotional, interpersonal support. Are you interpersonal or task-oriented? Now I'll ask this one. Who's task-oriented? Raise your hand. I know some of y'all. I've seen some of y'all with action. Y'all had them little shoes on, be moving to the school. I got 62 things to do today. I'm 64. Quick. Getting it done. Task-oriented. That is very important. You know why? We were in distress. We were in distress as a school district. You had to get some things done. But now you need to be interpersonal again as well as task-oriented. Are you connected with human beings? Are you connected with business leaders? Trust me, no one hates sitting down with these people when the first thing out of their mouth is, let me tell you what you need to do in Montgomery. So I started going, stop, let me tell you something. I don't need your input or your advice, thank you. That's how we start off our meetings. Everybody wants to tell us what to do in Montgomery. Right? But can you imagine, we still go to those meetings. And Martin, your brother need to be here in 45 minutes. What we talking about? You'll find out when we get there. Who talks to people like that? Right? That is not what you do. You gotta build relationships. So we don't like being talked to like that, so we're gonna tell you don't talk to people like that. I don't have to tell somebody I'm the boss. Right? Now, you look at you, say, big guy, you can fight, let's go. You're the boss, you're the bully. Cause you know what we win the fights with now? Anybody can wield this sword. You don't believe me? That's Doc, she'll tell you. It's how you win the fight with that sword right there. You don't have to prove that you're the boss. You don't have to bully. Build relationships, build relationships. Foster relationships. Find effective communicators while you're communicating effectively. My weakness, be sensitive to teachers' needs. Give teachers support and reinforcement. You should only reinforce and support the things that are important to you. Let that sit for a minute. Have pride, loyalty, humor, sense of team, trust. Again, be highly visible. Are you doing those things? Look at the outreach. You guys are lucky. You got a whole department for community engagement and outreach. Them ladies work so hard, it ain't even funny. I'm like, not only do you come to work from 7:30 to 3:30, but then you plan these amazing programs at night. And I'm gonna tell you something. And weekends, and you promote it through social media. Everything we've asked them to do, they do. What are you doing? Showing up? Right? I'm on Union Farms. Needless to say, you've had an awful 20 days. Not only did you come to a board meeting to see 2 or 3 students come and march in and do the code, you jumped straight in your car and went to a parent night. What are you doing? What are y'all doing? Right? You've got to do these things. Look at this, parent and community outreach. How do you win confidence? How do you build partnerships? And what's most important, the student performance and the student achievement? Are you tying all of that together? You guys are going to get a copy. Cultural mechanisms aligned with worthy student goals can influence teacher behavior. When I first got to Lincoln High School as principal, at graduation, every kid took off their mortarboard and pulled out a slip of paper, and they read the alma mater. And I was so ashamed. I was so ashamed. So I did like 75% of most black male administrators. I turned into Joe Clark. Hey, what's wrong with you? You're no good. Do you know the school song? Do you know the school song? Sing it right now. Come on here with me, boy. Miss Choir teacher, I want all these children to sing a song right now. I swear to you, I did that. Have y'all noticed that when school starts off, they show Stand and Deliver, Higher Learning, To Serve and Love, Dangerous Minds, and Lean on Me, right before school starts every year? Have y'all not noticed that? Y'all are tired from getting ready for school. You stand and you watch all the movies. Disney. I watch all of them, right? So what we did was, we started assigning students, one from each grade, to do announcements. All 4 of them show up every morning. If one's missing, the other one takes their place. So now I don't have to be there to make sure announcements are done. 4 kids to do the pledge, one from each grade. So when the one that graduates leaves, the one that was 11th grade takes over to do the pledge. One to sing the alma mater, right? So if one's got a sore throat or sick, the other one takes the place. So you have 4 groups, 3 activities. You have 12 kids that show up. When they see the other person's there and it's their week, they turn and go straight back to class. Well, you didn't do that. Yes, I did. Why did you do that? Because I built leadership and capacity in my own kids. I'm going to show you how I trained you to do it one time. One time, I'm going to praise you many times, and then I'm going to leave you alone. So I can go on a workshop, and the announcements, and the pledge, and your alma mater was done every day. How many of y'all doing that? Don't raise your hand. But it's not just those 3 activities, it's everything that you do. So now you know what happens at graduation? And after every home win in football, everybody, including the fans, hold hands and rock and sing the alma mater. Not a single person pulls out a sheet of paper, right? Because we built that cultural mechanism. We built it. It's built into the fabric of the school. What's built into the fabric of your school? Complaining? Bad customer service? Telling people how smart you are? Listening too hard? Waiting for your moment to jump in? Not valuing folks? Don't answer that. What's built into the fabric of your school? What are your cultural mechanisms that get teachers on board? Rituals plus ceremonies and symbols equal what? Results. I try to make a formula. Less effective schools, they are hollow. If you're not effective, those things are missing. You're not copying Joe Clark, you're connected with children. If it's working someplace else, copy it. Admire it, then acquire it. I did Dr. Seuss last week, so everything's rhyming this week. I apologize. List 5, share 2. Shared leadership decision making. Look at that. It's the what? What do you think it is? Visual for you. Help me, Bobby. Sharing your leadership decision making is the what? Now, how did you know that, Bobby? Exactly. You know that kid that's in your class 3 times in a row? Give him some visuals like that so he gets the questions right every now and then. It's the key, guys. Share. You are not that smart. Share. Let people do stuff. Share. Right? Find someone that is better than you in something, copy it, and then share it. Successful principals were those whose schools and staffs have high levels of involvement and participation in the decision making. Share it. And don't take the same 5-year-old land on the SRAB every time. You know that teacher that you can't stand that gets on your nerves and talks about you? Take them, then give them a duty. Now guess what? They no longer talk about you. And who cares that they're talking? Put them to work. You got to be strategic. Y'all ain't being strategic enough. Be strategic. Who's your A team? I'm trying to be consistent with the other trainings that you had. Who's the A team? Have you altered it any? Who's on it? When do you meet? What do you meet about? Here's a kicker. Are you successful when you meet? Do you have a next step on your agenda? I'm not going to ask you, but I'm asking you. Y'all still doing agendas for your meetings? Everybody signing them? Do you have a next step on it? If you need a template, email me, I'll send it to you. You should have a next step. You know why? If we're meeting and we're not leaving with something to do, why are you wasting my time? Why in the world are you wasting my time? Oh, I got that mid-Saharan skin, that little Kleenex you stuck all over. All right. A teams need real versus advisory power. If the people on your A team you do not trust, shame on you, get something to do. And if you got somebody you don't trust, build capacity in them. Okay? Collaboration. High performing leaders of low socioeconomic schools, they structure the day to ensure that collaboration around instruction happens. Are you high performing? You're in a low socioeconomic area? Are you taking time during the day to let your teachers collaborate? Is collaboration a focus of yours? Because if you let teachers collaborate, they will surprise you with the great things that they can do. Is it part of your schedule? Right? Is it part of your schedule without hiring more people? If you need help with planning that, ask for help. Because hiring a new person and spending more money shouldn't be the answer to everything. Let's be innovative and creative and strategic when we're planning collaborative times for our teachers during the day. Okay? That's what high-performing principals in low socioeconomic schools do. They value the collaboration. Look at your journal. You know those notes you've been taking the whole time we've been doing this. And locate a piece of evidence where instructionally based collaboration takes place during your day. You know I put Homer there, because what does he say when he can't get something right? There you go. And when you start looking for that evidence of where you formally value collaboration, that's going to be your answer. No, I guess I don't. I don't formally value collaboration with my staff during the day. Shame on you. You should. Effective principals are at the center of the curriculum, and they're working with everybody. You're in the middle. You don't give it up. Let me tell you something. The days of books, buses, and butts, billies, whatever. I can't even remember that now, right? So in 2002, we started something called disaggregation of data. It was so funny, the old principals couldn't even read the word. We're disaggregating the data. What? We're just something, we're doing something to the data, right? That was when we shifted and became instructional leaders. Do you know some big schools were still going, here's my curriculum AP, here's my books AP, here's my discipline AP. You know what happened when we did that? We failed to develop our staffs to be leaders. You have to be an instructional leader. So then, when those guys became principals, I'm being reflective. Guess what we couldn't do? Lead instruction. So we started turning to the ladies. Hey, ladies, you want to be my AP and lead instruction? Wrong answer. You're the leader. You are the instructional leader. Are you effective or not? Either do or don't. There is no try. Effective principals are at the center. Are you in the middle? If you're not, you need to figure out a way to get yourself in the middle. Look at the ongoing pursuit of high level of student learning. Read that to yourselves. Wow, you know I put those eyes there? Look at that. Look at what that says. Look at the truth right in front of you. Plain and simple. Are you looking at the standards? Do you know what you need to know? Are you planning lessons based on what you need to know? And then are you making sure that they get there? That's common sense, folks. But if we ask people, what are they basing their whole program on? They go, oh no. What did Dr. Moore say? Wrong answer. Standards-based instruction. Know what it is you're supposed to be teaching, design the lessons for it, set the expectations, and then help people get there. That's what high-achieving, highly effective administrators do. I love that you focus on safety around here. Thank you, Jesus. Right? Do some more. Be in the center of this. Principals of high-achieving schools develop a systematic process of planning, problem-solving, decision-making, and is focused on school improvement. Wow. If you got people who refuse to do what they're supposed to do, look at this. If you got people that refuse to do what they're supposed to do, don't let that mess fester. Pester them until they transfer, quit, or resign. Now, that's just one, like, excuse me, HR, put your fingers in your ears. There's a professional way to do this. I love Aaron Moore. Handle it. Use the process for it. Handle it. Handle it. Okay? Handle it. And what that means is you tell them what to do, you set the expectation, you go and sit with them, you talk about it, you leave them a little note in writing. Then you show back up, you talk about it again, you give them a little stronger letter. The next thing you know, there's somebody going home for a day or two, about being hopefully it's not paid. They come back, next thing you know, they turn in their notice in. If they refuse to do what you're supposed to do, don't let it fester. You will be student focused. You will be customer service oriented. You will be standards based. You will have enthusiasm. You will be where the students are. And if they won't do it, pester them. Don't let that mess fester. Pester. I told you. Dr. Seuss got it. Until they do it, transfer, quit, or resign. Look at this. The curriculum. What drives a school? Whatever it takes to achieve. Look at this. Plan, work, learn. What's in the middle of plan, work, learn? What? Not a question mark. What is it? That's me. Answer. Answer. What is it? Student what? Achievement. If we plan properly, we work hard, students are learning, and then you get the performance outcome that you want. You get achievement. How many of y'all involved in planning? How many people go side by side with a teacher who's struggling and show them how to teach? You're so doggone smart. Go help that teacher teach. How many of you principals have sat by a failing teacher and helped them plan a lesson and help them teach it? Side by side. I can do a history class right now. Thank you, ma'am. I love you for that. Thank you for doing that. Because you don't just abandon them and pull the plug out and let them go down the drain. You help them first. You sit side by side with them. Then you work with them. And then hopefully they learn. I'm talking about the teachers too, not just the kids. Then you get the outcome that you need. Look at this. Principles of high-achieving schools. Visit classes. Give feedback. Study instructional approaches. Deliver instruction. Engage in planning. In your mind, put a check by the one you do the most. in your mind, put an X by the one you do the least. You consider yourself high achieving, right? Highly successful, right? Okay, rank yourself. Put a 1, 2, 3, 4 by what you do. 1 is the most, 4 the least. Rank and order them. See what your focuses are. Are you getting training to increase your skills? Is this book of 60 pages that we gave you 6 months ago still unread? Shame on you. You should read 6 books a year on stuff that has nothing to do with your job. And when am I gonna do that? When do you find time to get on social media? You make time. I'm gonna give you a little box of books in the bathroom. I don't know. Disgusting. Right? I don't know what you're gonna do. But people who care about being great take time to improve themselves. Who's bold enough to tell me an educational book they're reading right now? Okay. Yes, ma'am, I love you.
Lincoln's Lessons in Leadership. And one thing I want to add in comparison to this book.
There's always one to watch. There's always one to watch.
All right, so watch how I handle it. Gary, come up here and click my clicker for me. I'm gonna click my clicker.
Purposeful visibility.
That's right.
It's one thing to be visible.
That's right.
but Purposefully
Yes.
visible. Not just standing in the cafeteria talking as a staff member, but interacting, engaging,
That's right.
with students.
That's right. I love it. I love it. Principals of high achieving schools take interest in instruction, add their voice while working side by side, but allow great latitude. So you want to be creative, innovative, and stretch the parameters within your classroom, I got your back, do it. You want to do standards-based grading? I just did a vlog. I just learned what a vlog was the other day, a video log. This guy contacted me, said, hey man, here's the topic, make a video, send it to me, we post it, we put it on my blog. Let's talk about grading. You guys will send your information back in the fall about Rick Wormley, the country's leading authority on grading. We talked about, you were there. We talked about standards-based grading, right? You want to do that in your classroom, go to Dr. Moore. Tell her how you're going to do it. You know what she's going to say? Hey, I'm going to be right now. I'm going to give you support or whatever you need, but make sure you do it right. She will let you do it. Get outside the box of what you're doing. She will be with you. We're going to give you the latitude to be creative if it's great for kids. If it's great for kids. Look at risk taking. Improve instruction by supporting innovation through experimentation. How are you doing it as a principal? Let's do share one. How are you supporting teachers to do that? If you can't think of any, shame on you. Find somebody here and copy them until you can figure it out. Professional development opportunities. Are you doing that? You building it into the day? Is it embedded? Are you supporting them? Is it doable? Is it manageable? Are you doing this? Have you created environments where the teachers, once you've trained them, you give them support, you give them resources, they can actually manage it because it's structured in such a way to do that? Are you protecting instructional time? I'm gonna tell you right now, the thing I can't stand the most is the doggone walkie-talkies. They got them so loud in the building, you can't even hear the principal when you're standing next to them. The police don't do that. You know why? They don't want the criminals to hear what they're saying. So why are your security guys doing it? They're so loud in the hallway, they disrupt classes. The number one consistent thing in all secondary schools is the walkie-talkies are too loud. Turn them down. Right? Is it just me? I thought it was just me. Okay? All calls. Have you shut down your all calls? You know the little student age you got sitting in the office playing on Facebook? Make them get their little butts up and walk down to that class. You mean I gotta walk 75 times you to head, didn't you? Come on. You got a class for this. Make them walk down to get kids. Absolutely. I kept 6 or 8 in there because we send them in every direction. Once class starts, no all calls. Great schools don't do that, in case you didn't know. High achieving schools don't do that. No all calls during instruction. Minimize your interruptions. Monitor student progress. Personally monitor teachers' roles in tracking data. Disaggregate the data. Share the information. And when you're sharing the information, you may want to read the business rules before you do it so that you can be consistent and informative. Use the same language of the business rules. Now, no lie. In our community, we have to, in other words, it. So in other words, Mom, I need you to look at this 3 times a week. Read the business rules and then break it down. Be a part of sharing the data with your people. Use data for improvement. Your improvement plans, student achievement, staff development. You should be able to tell me what your weaknesses are and what your plans are to fix it this summer. That's what great leaders do. What are your plans? And then I know everybody celebrates success at the end of the year because they're so tired, they've earned it. I had this lady that I met in Birmingham that did facials, and she had a massage chair. So I used non-public money, brought all the ladies in. They had all these aromatherapy candles everywhere, did all this stuff, and that lady was doing facials.
What kind of funds are those?
Non-public.
I didn't get it. Wow.
Oh, y'all had that?
That was wonderful.
Y'all had that?
No, we good.
Well, it's important to make sure you use the right funds. I had student teacher incentive funds that were donated. Maybe I should let Arthur speak on this and not go too far. But I found ways to celebrate. You know, barbers are off on Monday, so I had 3 barbers come in and cut the men's hair on Monday on their off periods. That's an $8 to $10 perk that they got for free. We put the barber's hat in our thing, swept all the hair up when we left, right? There are ways that you celebrate your folks that don't cost a whole bunch, okay? Celebrate your folks. Recognition of students and staff. It solidifies and fortifies your identity. It contributes to effectiveness. And most importantly, it improves morale. It improves morale. If the morale is bad and you're the leader, who is that on? It ain't on me. It's not on Dr. Moore. You're the leader. Remember, if it's good or bad, it's on you. It's all on you. If the morale is bad, look within. Right? And sometimes morale is bad because you did nothing to stop that person with the big mouth that ruined everything. Because you know what happens with great teachers? They're watching you to see what you're going to do to the bad teacher. And then they're going to change how they behave based on what you do. Now, they're going to do what they're supposed to do because they're great teachers. They may not do it as hard as they want to. That's why you don't eviscerate. You know what evisceration is? It's like when they used to draw water and cut you up and rip their guts out. You do not eviscerate children or teachers in public. You do not rip their guts out in public. And if you do that, good teachers see you, and that affects morale in a negative way. So that terrible teacher that's running their mouth, bring them into your office. I know you running your mouth because you tell everybody. So bring her into your office, tear her up with a witness. And when she leaves, you won't have to tell anybody because guess what she's going to do? Because she talked too much anyway. You already knew that. You already know what her weakness was. She talked too much. So when you tear her up, she's going to go tell everybody, look at this. He done broke me up. He's walking down the hall, waving the paper. It's funny back. Look at it. Look what he said about me. But you didn't do it publicly. But if you do that, then the good teachers know that everybody's accountable, including the bad ones. That's positive for morale. That's not negative. Role modeling. Successful people only spend time on what's important. Is morale important? Okay, so if you talked about your day, and you wrote your day down, which I know y'all did with that principal training you did, and you went back and you grouped your activities and looked at the percent of your day that you spend time doing what, that's what you value. Like a mama puts her money and her love on what she values, even though you little bad little Terry, she loves you, so she gonna put her time and her money on you. So what you value is what you should be putting your resources on too. Professional development, the things you're buying, right? What high achieving principals don't do? What do they not do? What do they not do? High achieving principals, what do they not do?
Obviously, Antonio, I see what you're thinking back there, you smart guy.
They do the opposite of all the stuff you just showed me, Mr. Rowland.
Yes. They don't sit, wait for someone to tell them what to do. They don't sit and say, I've already tried, there's nothing we can do. They don't make excuses of why they're failing. They don't get down when a tragedy occurs. Man, they stand up taller. This is a tough place, y'all. And even our high achieving schools suffer from the negative things that come from the community of some of the tragic things that happen in the other schools. So even if you're doing well, there's still stigma on you. This is a tough place to be a leader. It's a challenging place to be successful. But you know what? High achieving principals take those challenges. What challenges are you going to take? What changes are you going to make this year? All right, this concludes my PD. Go ahead. That's it. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to share this with all of you. So here is your document that you turn in for your PLU. You ready? I'm going to make this easy for you because I knew what would happen, Munson. No one has their little notebook. She has a notebook. She has a notebook. What I'm going to do, love it, I don't see your notebook. I'm going to give you this. Everywhere it says this one, this three, share two, this right on. And at the end, I gave you a graph organizer came from my friends in special ed. I'm going to give you the thing, you just fill it in. I learned that from my special ed coach. So I'm going to give you this PowerPoint. You print it out, where it says list 5, name, share 2, list 2, share 1. You just write on that. Where it says turn and talk, you just write a sentence of what you thought. So where it tells you to do something, you just fill that in, and you turn that in to Debbie, and that will be your completion for your PLU. Because we gotta have evidence that you had a written piece, right? So there's your PLU, all right? Thank you.
Let's do this because I have a lot of words to say. Let's take a 10-minute break, no more than 10, so that we can get started and we can get done. Because I'll need you for all of the time because I have a lot of words. So we'll get started at 10:15. Oh, I saw yesterday last evening. Oh, yeah, okay, I did. I saw that, and I was like, but I'm gonna get with you.
Trying to either confirming or denying.
I'll get it done. Hey, good morning, how are you, Jason? Are you going to be at, the morning of March 25th? Okay, let me give you the, signage. Okay. Okay, okay.
I've already talked to Lipstick again.
Okay.
I'll touch base with him and then I'll have everything set
Okay,
up.
I just wanted to have a point of contact, get signage. I'll be over there, but. You can hear me?
You ain't getting ready to call it a career, are you? If she keeps the grandkids, so we know. I don't know if I want to go 8 to 5 every day for grandkids. I love it, but not 8 to 5 every day.
Say, I don't know what you say.
That's right. That's right. The bomb goes off.
Okay, according to the clock in the back of the wall, it's 10:16, so we're going to get started. Can we come back to center? Let's get started. We want to utilize the time. We want to utilize the time as best we can. So can we come back to center? You should have on your table, not necessarily one per person, but you should have on your table one of 3 words: initiate, improve, or impact. You should have the advanced ed narrative report dated December. You should have a page that says activity lost at sea, and then you should have a page that says continuous improvement. Those are the things that should be at your table. And you should have an Elliott report for every principal. So what I am going to do is make sure I cover all of those pieces of paper before we're done. But what I want to do first is say, on behalf of Dr. Moore, if I may, and all of the accreditation chairing committees, we thank you for all of the hard work that you put in preparing yourselves and preparing your faculty for the monitoring review that was in December. There were a lot of accolades and acknowledgement of work, and what we want to do very briefly is give you an overview of the narrative report that was received. So you have that in your hand, and I was supposed to pass out some highlighters. So if anybody wants highlighters, here are some. This is Dr. Bailey has. But in your narrative report, did I look something? All right. Let's talk about the narrative overview. You have the document in your hand. So let's recap. When we started the process after last March, we had 6 priorities, 32 directives. So that was 32 pieces of 32 items that we had to address as a system. 8 of those standards were in needs improvement, and 1 standard was emerging. In December, when they came back, we still have those 6 priorities because that's what we're working towards. But we now have 19 directives. We have 19 must-dos, and that is a significant improvement from 32 to 19. And the support that you've given us has made that happen. 3 recommendations. So a recommendation says, these are things you need to think about, but the directive says these are things you got to do. When we come back, get them done. So those 3 recommendations, and all of them were in finance, that's excellent. And so we appreciate all of the work that you've done. 6 of the standards, there were 9 standards that we were working with. 6 of those standards are emerging. 3 of them meets expectations. 2 meets expectations were in finance. The other one was in priority 5, which has to do with curriculum. So I want to say thank you. next monitoring review is in May. It will be May 6th through 8th. That's the date we're asking for. Priority one says, and we go, what? What? No. What? Oh, yeah. December 2018 was the second review. May 2019 is the third time they're coming.
So that monitoring review, we're gonna be, how is that next? Assessment.
Yeah, they really are.
So I will
To
let
the
Dr. Moore
17th.
know because she is in the back.
It's for the
But-
17th.
The date for May, this May date is the date we chose originally for the engagement review when we were going to just have an engagement review. So this date has been on our calendar as a system all year long. In fact, since last year this time, because we submitted the dates and we were approved for them last year. So I'm not sure what happened and how that testing ended up overlapping on some dates that we had already established. But I will talk to Dr. Moore to see how she wants to handle it, because this is the first I've heard that there was a test that week. So thank you.
So who will be conducting the review?
They're going to send another team. It'll be Dr. Harrison and then another team. What we don't know is whether or not they'll be in schools, but there will be principal interviews because that always takes place. We might be able to. Okay. We are, wait a minute, my brain got shifted. Sorry. They're going to do monitoring, they're going to do interviews, because that's a part of the process that's standard, that will not change. So there will be some principals who will have to come out of the building. We're going to see if they cannot be in schools, because when they come to schools, they come to do Elliott's. We're going to do an Elliott sweep before May, and I'll talk to you all about that in just a few minutes. So maybe if we've done enough Elliott's, they won't have to come. They won't have to come to your building, and we won't have to make any adjustments. So Dr. Harris will be in the system tomorrow, and I will talk to him about that, especially the testing that week. And I'll talk to Dr. Moore when she gets back in the room. Yes, ma'am.
Are the Elliott's going to be announced or not?
We're gonna talk about that in a minute. We'll talk about that in a few minutes.
I'm just saying, because the email we got on yesterday from Tracy regarding the window, is kind of, based on what's going on in your building, as long as you test it in that window.
You're gonna have a window for the Elliott's. So let me get to that. All right, so let's quickly talk about the priorities. Priority one is still the same as I stated: review, revise, and comply with our board policies. The review team acknowledged the work we've done with the policies, but what we're continuing is the implementation of the process, which included informing our stakeholders of how we work through the policy process and the policy revision process. And to this point, all of the policies have been board approved. And so we're moving towards next steps, which is informing stakeholders. And you all are a part of the stakeholders that have to be informed. So that's the next process that's happening with priority one. Priority two says develop, document, implement, and adhere to a code of ethics policy which defines the specific roles and responsibilities for members of the school board. This priority deals mainly with the board, and they acknowledge that we have a new board now. In fact, they were here for the board swearing in, but they had really good interviews with the new board members, because all of the new board members now, well, not now, I don't mean that quite that way, but the new board members expressed a desire to have positivity in the district and to be collaborative with the administration and with the schools, not to be in the way, but to be a part of the process. And they expressed that during the interviews. So we're still looking at board trainings that need to happen, but the team is more confident that we can move forward with a board that supports the district with positive accolades and positive affirmation. Priority 3 has to do with our communication plan and the timeliness and the consistency associated with disseminating information. What really helped is that communications plan that's in place and has been made public. They acknowledge that the superintendent has efforts to speak directly to leadership, and that was communicated to the team by you all, that the superintendent speaks directly to you and she's accessible to you. Community members also acknowledge the efforts of the superintendent and the communication, and there's an acknowledgement of the social media impact that we're having providing information. The organizational chart and plan is being presented to the board as we speak, has been presented to the board, and so all of that process is still in motion. So what's very important about the narrative, the second report, is that we continue all of what was implemented and discussed in the first report. Priority 4 has to do with the student-centered learning, and this is where the Elliott conversation comes into place. The priority is still reflective of our Elliott data, but it also reflects the fact, if you look over on page 9, in the first paragraph, it says principals overwhelmingly stated that they felt tremendous support in the school this year as compared to previous years. Not that statement, that wasn't the point I wanted. It's the paragraph just before the words before the words directives. Consistently collecting school level Elliott data, utilizing the data at the school level, and rolling the data up to a system-wide view are imperative for systemic and sustained growth and success. So what they determined is that there's a lot of Elliott data, but there is no real conversation about whether or not the data is actually being used in the schools, in the classrooms, and whether or not that data is being used to support system level professional growth and development. So that's the direction we're moving in with that priority. Priority 5 has to do with engaging teachers, content area specialists, and instructional staff in collaborative conversations about curriculum and instructional expectations. They acknowledge the progress of C&I, but there are concerns that there is a lack of teacher input around instruction and resource implementation. And if you look on page 10, at the very bottom of the first paragraph, the words say, while MPS well-utilized classroom Elliott sweeps provide instructional data, the lack of classroom teacher input results in an incomplete analysis with which to make judgments about the true impact of the implementation of each resource. So that conversation is twofold. That conversation is whether or not we are using resources that work, whether or not we are actually determining which resources are effective, and what are we doing about that conversation once it's determined. So we need to, as a system, and I think that conversation was started in Title I at some point, we need to determine what resources we have for real, because there are a lot of them still floating around the district. What resources are we actually using, and are the ones we using effective? And if they're not effective, are we discarding them and no longer purchasing them? That's a part of the conversation that needs to happen. But then the next part, once we determine what resources are being used, is whether or not they're being implemented to fidelity. Here. Priority 5, that was 5, right? Priority 6, that's the finance one. That's the one where we rose from the bottom to the middle. I like it. Meets expectations. There were many accolades about the work of the CSFO, but a lot of that work could not have happened without you all adhering to the things that he was saying and what he asked you to do across the course of that year. And what we're being asked is to sustain and continue budget improvements, aligning funds to system goals and the strategic plan. Are there any questions or concerns about the report? That was really, really quick. And I stopped clicking. Okay. That was really, really quick. But I wanted you to have an overview of the narrative. Well, we wanted you to have an overview of the narrative before we move to the next thing. In April, you remember in November, we did the activity where we talked about every narrative, got your feedback, and you had to turn that, information over to your faculty? We're going to do that again in April, at the April. It's not me. Oh, yes, it was. We're going to do that same exercise again in April, and you're going to have to turn it around to your staff. Are there dates up there? Before April 26th. So leadership is the 17th, I believe. That gives you a week and a half to get it turned around. I said April 26th. The team presumably is coming that first week of May. So that's going to give you just an inch of wiggle room if you can't meet those dates. There were, during the November exercise, there were a couple of principals who had scheduled activities and they had to move their turnaround to the next week. As long as they let us know that was acceptable because somebody came out to watch the training. But April 26th gives you enough time to get that review in with your staff before the date. Everybody good? Because if they do teacher interviews, then they're going to need to know what's in the narrative, what came before and after that process. Yes, ma'am.
So we're just reviewing this information.
No, ma'am.
The other, the same person we already did.
No. Okay, let me clear it up. In April, okay, now I know what to say. We're going to have to do new narratives. So when we do the new narratives, they will be ready for the April 17th Leadership Council. And when we do that same exercise with the new narratives, you're turning around the new information. Did I say it right that time? Everybody's good? All right. Ma'am. Same process, new information, yes. Everybody good? All right. Dr. Moore, I don't want to forget this, so I want to go ahead and say it now. We were just informed that there is a test. There's a test window during that same week that we're asking the team to come, that first week of May. So I don't know when that testing came up. We've had this week on the calendar for monitoring since last year, so I don't know what happened. And so at some point, we'll talk again to see whether or not what we need to do.
It's actually May 6th and 17th.
The window is actually May 6th through 17th.
Isn't it the 17th? I think that's what it says.
That's what Ms. Martinez said.
Yeah.
No, the test window. All right, everybody good? Let's talk about the next steps with advanced ed upcoming activities. Let's talk about the Elliott Suite. Every school, we're doing two things. We're working through requirements for Elliott, but we're also working through opportunities for learner-centered classroom improvement in our building. Because that's where the focus is now, whether or not our students are engaged. So we're going to do an Elliott Suite in the building this spring. You're going to use your staff that's trained, because you have some staff, you have some leadership staff in your building who's trained to do the Elliott. And if that's okay with you, they can do that. And then you're going to solicit some central office support if you can, and that depends on their calendar. Let me also say that Ms. James, Mr. James, who's no longer with us, and Steve Blair, who is no longer with us, have been trained and participated in the Elliott Suites in the fall. They're willing to support you in your Elliott Suites for the spring. In fact, they would love to participate, because if they participate in the Elliott Suites and do a couple of other activities, they will also get their PLU. So, Mr. Mr. James and Steve Blair is willing to support the Elliott Suites in the district, at your school. You should visit cross-curricular classrooms. Your visitation time should be varied so that you get the beginning, the middle, or the end of class periods for different teachers. The data doesn't really represent what's going on in your building well if every time you go to a teacher's classroom, any teacher's classroom, you just go at the beginning, or you just go at the end. You don't get an opportunity to see the evolution of instruction if you're only focused on one time frame. So make sure you vary the times that you go in to see those classrooms, to do those observations. The focus is on the outcomes and the areas of concern as the data is shown, as the data presents, and how we're going to plan for PD in the future. We expect that you do 25% of your staff. That's going to be different in school because your population is different, but that's a fair number because it's a percentage of who you have. Your observations must be put into advanced ed, and we want you to choose 1 or 2 days, not consecutive days, between the 25th and April 12th. So nobody's going to run into your building tomorrow and say, have you done your Elliott Suite? But you have a wide enough window to get it done, and you should be able to do it in 1 or 2 days. But they need to be consecutive days because it's a snapshot in time. Everybody good?
Wait a minute, you said not consecutive or reduced consecutive? I
Consecutive,
thought you said not.
1 or 2
sorry.
consecutive days. Now, everybody should have received your Elliott Sweeps data. The request was that you use the Elliott Sweeps, you complete Elliott's based on what you needed in your building in order to determine where your PD needed to be in your building. So there was no requirement of a 3rd or 10 or 5. There was not that requirement. However, with the team coming again, we do want to have some Elliott's in the engine. But if you have a staff of 50 or 60, and between August and February 8th, you've done only 6 Elliott's, to me, that's a problem. Because to me, it sounds like you don't intend to do it. You're just doing them when we say you have to do it. The Elliott really does give you a framework for what kind of instruction is happening in your building, whether or not it's completely teacher-driven, or whether or not the students are engaged in the process. So doing the Elliott's allows you to see that snapshot of student behavior in your building, so then you can better frame your teacher's professional development. So 6 for me personally, with a faculty that large, is unacceptable. Now, I know some people are going to say, I've done the Elliott's, I haven't put them in the engine. Please put them in. That's the only way for us to determine whether or not you're doing what we asked you to do. So this report I've given back to you all. The report establishes data from the beginning of school. I put in August 1 to February 8 because that was the day I was pulling data. And so when I pull data past February 8, I only put in February 8. So now you have a reflection of what we see in the engine as of February 8. And we really need you to put the Elliott's in that you've already done, so that your data is reflective of what you're actually doing in your building. Because I can only work on the evidence I have, and the data says that many of you are not doing that data, are not doing the Elliott. So the flip side of that is, there's a middle school that has done like 80. That's beautiful. But that 1 or 2 schools, those 1 or 2 schools are carrying the load for the district. As a district, I think we've done 800. But when you have just a few schools who are doing a lot and using the data, and then more schools who are doing a few, that's not going to give us an accurate account of what's going on in our district instruction. Enough of that. eProof surveys. eProof surveys, we're projecting that the surveys are going to begin around the 25th, and that may change. I don't want anybody to stress out about this, something else you have to do. We're not going to actually disaggregate this data until the summer. But we need to have the surveys done before the team gets here, so that they can see that we're still moving along their timeline of progression. I want to show you the surveys, because when you see the surveys, you're going to say, oh, that looks like a lot of stuff. So I'm gonna minimize this. Guys, I'm gonna send you all of this, so I don't want you to, stress about what you're seeing. let's look at, the inventory, because there's an inventory and there's a climate and culture survey. The inventory asks questions like this. Who are you? It asks for demographics. What grade you're in, how long have you been a student? And these are the kinds of questions that they ask you in the inventory. I set learning goals, I meet or talk with an adult, I explore different careers, about projects, what you participate in. Okay, it won't let me move. The inventories are leveled. Elementary has one set of questions. Secondary has a different set of questions. And you see the categories 6 or more times a year, 3 to 5 times a year, 1 or 2 times a year. Now it'll let me go. I work on real life problems, class presentations, work assignments. That's the nature of the questions that are going to be in the inventory, okay? Then you also have climate and culture surveys. The climate and culture survey, of course, starts with the basic demographic questions. How long have you been a staff member? How many years have you been working? Then the climate and culture will ask you which 4 of the following words or phrases best describe the expectations for students at your school. And then you'll pick 4. Which of the following words or phrases best describe how you feel? So those are different categories of questions in the climate and culture survey and in the inventory. Does that make sense? Did I show y'all the questions? Did somebody say the PowerPoint didn't show up? I'm just talking. I think you all see the questions.
It's okay, we were listening to you.
I y'all seeing the questions. All right, so there is a student and a teacher inventory. There is a student, teacher, parent inventory. There is a central office, teacher, parent, and student climate and culture survey, and there is a staff survey. So when you get the surveys in the school, there's a survey for your certified and a survey for your classified. So everybody in the schools will take a survey. So they will be clearly delineated at that time. You should not have to try to figure out which one it is. We're going to send you a link so that you can provide that link to your stakeholders. What your responsibility is to advertise the surveys, publicize that so that you get enough parents to participate. But your students and your staffs, they're a captive audience. You should be able to hit your percentages with your staff and your students because you have them in the building every day. And so what I need you to do is create an opportunity for them to take those surveys electronically and get your numbers to where they need to be reflective of your environment. I'm not sure what you want to do, what are the different methods you want to implement for your parents, because the surveys are all electronic. There will not be any paper pencil surveys this time. I will provide you with this slide that talks about what the surveys do and why the surveys are important. Questions, problems, and concerns about the survey? E-proof, anything else? Great. We're gonna keep moving.
You guys send all this
Yes, ma'am. Okay, this is where I have my most words. And you're going to participate. All right, so where my focus is now for the next, time, for this time and space, is going to be about the PLU. The thing I want to say before we get started is some of this information you're going to have to turn around as a part of your PLU. So I need you to have your training ears on as you're following with me. Gotcha. All right, so the purpose of this activity is to review the PLU requirements, complete the PLU activity, give you an overview of the continuous improvement process as it relates to the advanced ed conversation, and then to give you the continuous improvement activity that you're going to prepare in your building. At this time, we have completed the activities that you see on the board. Some of you have not completed all of them, and you were supposed to have let me know that by completing that survey that I sent. I'm going to spend the next few days trying to cull through that information to provide you with the information that you need. But we've completed all of this information that you see. You still have to have some of the documentation for it, and you still need to put that activity on your logs with this information we've completed. Maybe if I turn it the right way, that might help. Yeah, how about that? Activities to be completed: the Elliott sweeps, the eProof survey implementation, the continuous improvement activity that you're going to implement in your building, and the turnaround activity that you're going to do in preparation for the May visit. The reason that we changed the itinerary, the agenda of things to be completed, is because we're not going to finish our monitoring activity this year. We're going to finish monitoring, but not our engagement review. Our engagement review is projected for June of next year. So what we're doing now is monitoring. They're monitoring us to see about our progression. What they used to call a monitoring review is now called an engagement review. So our engagement review is scheduled for next June. Next spring, I'm sorry. So we are in collaboration with Advanced Ed, direct personal collaboration with Advanced Ed until spring of 2020. Okay? So I needed to say that so we can all be in tune. But in order for us to get the PLU, we shifted the activities because these activities won't be completed because they are directly associated with the engagement review. The narratives, reports, all that you do at the school, and the disaggregation of the survey data, that is key to the engagement review process, and we won't complete that. So we had to create additional activities to substitute for these. I will need to call a meeting of PLU participants that are not principals or who have not participated and who are missing pieces so that you can have enough information to complete the PLU. And we will complete the PLU by May. Are there any questions about where we are with the PLU in terms of the activity? All right, so let's proceed with this. Advanced Ed, I want to remind you of where Advanced Ed started with us. Advanced Ed started with us with our standards of quality system or standards of quality schools. Currently, there are 3 performance standards, and for systems, 3 performance standards for schools. And that's a big shift for Advanced Ed. We were focused previously on whether or not our system could demonstrate the knowledge of, the existence of, or the practice of standards. So you remember in that last monitoring review, we created a lot of processes. Hear the words. We created a lot of processes, and we were accredited because we had the processes in place. That conversation that we had in 2012, 2013 did not discuss how well we were implementing those practices, nor did that discussion include what was the impact and embeddedness of those processes. Advanced Ed has changed their focus. Their focus is now on the continuous improvement of the processes and the quality of implementation. So I want you to take 2 minutes and talk about the word that's on your table. You should have initiate, improve, or impact on your table. And I want you to tell me what those words mean to you and why do you think they're important for instructional practice. I need a phone so I can set a timer. Here. And I need one person to report out. I need the group in the back to also participate, and you should have a word on your table.
All right, we're gonna initiate, which means to begin. We need to have critical conversations about continuous improvement process. We need to have critical conversation. What do you think they mean for instructional practice? Critical conversations about
What do you think they mean for instructional practice?
so what are we doing in our building? It's working, and what's working in our buildings? What's working? What?
Which word is that you using for what's working?
No, we have an issue.
I'm looking up there at all three words. So yeah, okay. So initiate the conversation.
Initiative.
What's working? What's not working? What needs to be changed?
That's good. Changing the need to occur to ensure student achievement. Student achievement is in focus. You're gonna be the spokesperson? You shocked?
No, I just have to know what to say.
To initiate, we just said, to initiate critical conversation with data, what's working and what isn't. Change the need to occur to ensure that student achievement is our main focus.
All right, that was about 2 minutes. I need one person from each table to stand. I need one person from each table to stand. Oh, you want to know what you're going to do? Is that why nobody standing up? What I need to do is, I need one person from each table that represented initiate to come up here. I need one person that represented improve to come up here. And I need one person from impact to come up here.
One person from each.
Yes. All right, so what you're going the quicker we participate, the quicker we can lead. Initiate on the end.
No.
All right. Parents, can the other group we're right here.
Well, we do, anymore, there's no room for.
All right. What I want these groups to do, who are in front, is I want you to talk amongst yourselves what happened at your table based around that word, so that we can have one consistent conversation about what initiate means. There's going to be one reporter out from this group, from that group, and from that group. And we're going to talk about what our system sees is what these words mean and what they mean for instructional practice. Everybody good? All right, I'm gonna set the timer for 2 minutes.
What's that? I'm fine. How are you? Are y'all excited about being a DLL school? You know, she went to my patrol and they said we want to be a school. Okay. That's what my little person came back and said, because we didn't have a team there, we weren't going to get it. Because she was going to come into the team. So we're so confused. Because Heather couldn't go because she had AUM students coming. And the other special ed research teacher was giving me AAA, so she couldn't go. That's what they told her. Well, maybe they changed their mind since then.
Maybe it was Wednesday. Rita mentioned that there may be a makeup training. You might get to go. So I don't know. I think it's still a bit
So confused because my little person is there. Love it. Love it. She really did. She loved it. I mean, we didn't mind her, but she was totally working on it.
I'll see if I can find out for sure. Did she get to keep her kids?
Yeah, she got to keep all the material. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, she's already met with her to go over. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, they've already met.
I'll see if I can find out.
Because, well, we're going to use it. Yeah, she got to keep the material, so we'll use it. It just may not be official. Yes.
All right, 2 minutes have expired. What we need is your one. We want to talk about initiate, initiate means.
For this one, initiate means to start somewhere, in regards to student achievement, improving as a group. We have to start, we have to begin with small steps, which will lead to bigger results, and also to move beyond complacency. If we're comfortable where we are and we don't initiate change, we are going to stay where we are or move back, in our achievement results.
Everybody in agreement?
Yes.
Yes. Excellent. Improve is ready.
Well, since Tinker, she knows I call her Tinker. She took our word and she mentioned our word, but this group, we need to start somewhere, and we thought about they want to initiate it, we improve on what they talk about. So what we're talking about is the improvement as far as in your buildings and what we do day to day. Don't rest on your laurels. You have to improve it. You're always seeking to go higher. You get to a point, you're at a plateau, you got to seek to go a little higher. That's what we talk about when you mention improvement.
And there's always
Room for it.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Impact.
Our word was impact, and of course, the question says, what do you think they mean for instructional practice? The word impact, as far as affecting, how does it affect the student's achievement? So we looked at teaching and learning. The quality of the teaching and how well the students achieve is based off of what they learn, and that is the impact of the instruction.
Thank you. Let's give our participants a big hand. Thank you very much.
Good job. Good job. Good job. Y'all did a wonderful job.
All right. So let's talk now about what advanced ed says about, let's talk now about what advanced ed says about initiate, improve, and impact. It's engagement, initiate is engagement and implementation. Improve is results and sustainability, and impact is embedded. So let's talk about these three things in relationship to our narrative and their business. When we talk about impact, we're looking for a demonstration of engagement and quality of implementation. So for each item, each standard, and for each part of the directive, they wanted to know, was there any engagement in those narratives, in those standards? And is there any quality of implementation? So do the processes exist? And are they engaged in the process? Is the process being implemented? Then they wanted to know, was there any improvement? But improvement is not just about getting better, it's whether or not the results are sustainable. Whether or not there's a demonstration of the use of results. So that explains the statement they made in the narrative, which says, we see the Elliott data, but we don't see any evidence that they use the Elliott data. So the question on the table when you talk about improve is whether or not there is a use of the result and whether or not it's over time. So when they brought their report and we only moved a little bit towards these expectations, I was a little concerned. I couldn't understand why they could not see the work we had done. But when I went through this training and saw this slide, sustainability, that made all the difference in the world to me. Because how many processes and initiatives have we put in place? I've been in this district since 2008. How many initiatives and processes and rules and regulations and all those other words have we put in place since 2008? How many of them are still in place today? Okay, so I heard none, I heard laughter, I heard giggling, I saw some shaking of heads. That's because we have to be able to demonstrate sustainability. The sustainability in this district is what's going to carry us over the hump. And it's what makes student achievement visible, because they see the same thing over and over again. And they can trust in the reliability that you aren't going to change at every win. That sustainability is what's holding MPS back. We have to be able to put some initiatives in place and work toward embedding them into our culture. Then the next thing they look at is impact, embeddedness. Whether or not there is a demonstration of change to professional practice and the organizational culture. They look at each standard and rate this terminology over every standard to create a decision about where we rank as a district. Does that help you understand the narrative? Because it certainly helps me. Because I wanted to meet the expectations everywhere. We worked real hard. After all was up. Long hours work. And I thought it was appropriate. But when I see these definitions, I understand where we are. What are your questions about impact, about initiate, improve, and impact? Concerns? Any concerns related to the narrative? All right, so I look at the clock and I see what time it is, and I'm going to make some slight adjustments to this conversation. We are not going to do the table talk. Yeah, we're going to do the table talk about continuous improvement, but we're going to adjust some things after that. What is continuous improvement and what should it look like and what does it look like in your school? You have about 2 minutes to table talk about it. We're not going to do the swap. We're just going to table talk and report out from the table. You have 2 minutes.
One that's consistently looking at multiple forms of data to drive instruction. And also look at best practices and acceptance and working change. How do your instructional practice based on your data?
And I like to I like when there's some schools, it's close, and there's some schools that do, I know like the kids, they do a lot of continuous changes, like their groups, and, teaching what, and they'll look at, I don't know how many weeks they do it, but like, they'll look at exams and things like that, and then they make that assessment, along the kids, and they do things up here, do that. And on the elementary level, I guess we'll be doing that with our, I don't know if we do walk to read, but whatever the, what do you call those RTI?
That's what we're talking about doing next year.
Yeah, thank you. Well, you, the RTI is.
Well, you do this, so we're looking at doing that next year. We're starting to have that conversation. I'll have our intervention time at the same time. And I'm gonna do that when I do those skills. I'll get fourth grade teachers, have intervention at the exact same time. And the teacher will take the advantage of it. And then the specialist, reading specialist. We're starting to have that
And they do a whole lot of listening and listening year after year, that's what it's all about. But I mean, they understand it and they work. But it's good to have that flexibility. I just people to be willing to change and
Yes. The continuous improvement process should be reflective and introspective. I like those two words. Anybody else? Can I get somebody from the high school arena? Dr. Williams or Dr. Torrance, can you tell me what continuous improvement looks like, what it should look like?
We talk about several things. You probably won't hear Dr. Thomas like this, I'll take. But we talk a lot about just so much change turnover a lot of times in high schools. Whether it's faculty members, teach students. So we talk about just trying to make sure we have that common vision, keep that common language, make sure our PD and things of that nature continue throughout the year and over the years actually.
That's perfect. Common vision, common language, introspective, reflective. Anybody else? Anybody else? All right. So this is the definition that Advanced Ed uses for continuous improvement. It's an embedded behavior within the culture of a school that constantly focuses on the conditions, processes, and practices that will improve teaching and learning. What words stick out? Say again.
Behavior.
Behavior. What else? Constant. What else? Somebody said embedded. In order for continuous improvement to be successful in our school system and in our buildings, the processes, the reflective piece, it must be embedded. It must become a part of who we are. It's not just the ACEs. Continuous improvement is about that embedded behavior that constantly focuses on the conditions and processes. We're always looking for means of improvement, and we're always looking to see where that data comes from. A lot of times we want to make change, but we don't have any data to support it. So you always want to look at your data. Now, we've gotten to a place where data is always academic, but that's not the only data in our building. Have we looked in the library to see how many times students are in the library, how many books are being checked out? Have we talked to the school nurse or whoever is doing checkouts to see how many kids are being dismissed or going home because of illness? or other things? Have we looked at our targeting information to see and begin to determine why students are targeted? Have we looked at our processes? Just like Mr. Rowland said earlier, are we ringing the bell all day long? Are we making announcements all day long? All of those pieces of information are the data that help us determine the conditions, processes, and practices in our building. What are we going to do about those things if we're going to improve teaching and learning? There's one more thing I want to show you. It's gone. All right. There's a definition of culture that Advanced Ed uses. I want you to hear all the words. Culture is about how well people adapt to not necessarily change, but how well they adjust their behaviors over time. We get caught up in, we want a culture change, and we're gonna do a book study, and we expect people to change. But when Advanced Ed talks about culture, they talk about enough shared experiences such that people begin to forget what happened, and they begin to trust in what is happening now. So think about it. Culture is the last thing to change. We change a lot of processes, we change a lot of expectations, and then in order for anybody to believe you, they have to see you walking. They have to see it over time, and then they can adjust.
Wait a minute. So what you're saying is, if we're fussing at teachers about teacher attendance, we need to make sure principal attendance is good.
Absolutely.
I'll check.
Because they see where you are and they react accordingly. So just like we have, and this is honest, this is not about anybody particular, this is honest. Over the last few years, there's been a lot of murmuring in the district about how people feel about us, right? And how we feel disrespected and mistreated, right? Okay, there's no envy, but I know that's the truth. But I want you to stop and think for just a moment. In the last 6 months or so, have you really been mistreated and mistrusted as much as you were last year, 2 years ago? You really have. So there are enough shared experiences in our lives in this academic life for us to begin to adjust our trajectory about how we feel about MPS. When we adjust our trajectory, guess what? The teachers come along with it. So culture is not about a book study and then I expect you to miraculously change. It's about shared experiences, shared vision. Dr. Williams said, common language, common expectations, such that those shared experiences help change the trajectory of how we feel about our organization, about our school. Everybody with us? That's where Advanced Ed is at this point. I'm going to send you your activity that you have to turn around. I'm going to stop here. You're going to have a conversation in your building about what they see continuous improvement to be. I'm going to send you some talking points about compromise versus consensus. Does anybody know the difference between the two? See, if I compromise, that means I give up something. You have this and I give it up so that we can all be at peace. Consensus is different. Consensus is about everybody pulling together to see what we can actually live with. Doesn't mean I have to change or throw anything away. That means everything we agree on is what we stand on. That's consensus. So that's the difference between consensus and compromise. So I'm going to send you some talking points to do your activity. And then you're going to report that back to me as a part of your PLU activity. I can check that off. I can check off today's activity. I'll check your activity off. You do your earlier sweeps, you do your e-proof surveys, and we should be through with that PLU. Everybody? All right. I am done with my presentation, and I'll adjust the slides to get back in. Yes, because what you just said is the elephant in the room all the time. Advanced Ed wants to talk about both sides of the house, the academics and the operations, the instructional piece and the operational side of the house. Now, folks in your building, you have operational folks in your building. They're called your classified staff. They're called your custodians. And when you don't bring them into the conversation about change and culture, that creates a lack in your building. And they will behave as such if they don't believe that they're a valuable part of your organization. So yes, ma'am, that conversation needs to also happen on the operational side of the house if you give them the information. Thank you. Questions, problems, or concerns? Questions, problems, or concerns? I will send you the information. You should have it by the end of the day. I think there are two other things on the agenda. Dr. Moore wanted to have a word, and I think, where's my agenda? Somebody hand me an agenda so I can see it.
Here.
That's not. Mr. Ford is only talking secretary? Yes, I thought you knew. Okay, that's correct. That's correct. Okay, after, Dr. Moore speaks, two things will happen. Elementary principals are dismissed, secondary principals are not. And, magnet principals, don't forget that you have a meeting with Ms. White in lab D. Thank you guys so much for your attention. I apologize for the time.
Okay, is it my turn?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, very quickly, I want to just say, every time, Mr. Rhodes talks, I learn a lot of stuff about myself that I didn't know. But luckily, it's not real bad stuff, so, you know, I'll say this about him, I like to cook my own food, and so since it's just me, I always bring him, I'll say my leftovers, but they're good leftovers. As long as he behaves himself, he'll keep some of my leftovers. Okay, so, but you all, I know you've had a long day, but the information you have to share with you is really good stuff. I believe in you knowing what it is we're talking about, not just like, we want you to do this, we want you to do that. I want you to know why, I want you to know the process, I want you to know why it's important, and I want you to know how important it is that you as leaders are able to go back and share that kind of information with your staff. I talk about operating like a well-oiled wheel. Some of you who are a little older like me, my brothers used to take bicycle parts and put bicycles together. It would always have a little bump or something in it when you were trying to roll it down the road. So, you know, when you get that new bicycle or one that's in good shape, you don't have that. You just, that bicycle wheel just turns like it's supposed to, and you don't even have to think about it, right? So that's where I want us to get, and we're getting there. You're doing a wonderful job. Now, I want to move to something else real fast. Dr. Palmer, please stand up. Stand up. Now, first, I'm going to give you a round of applause. So, I think most of you know why I want him to stand and why we're giving him a round of applause. He had a real, you know, my little thing with, hey, Mom, we got a situation. We had a situation at the high. You all know what it was. It was in the news about the student who did something he shouldn't have done with a weapon. And I'm going to say that Dr. Parms and his staff did like the police officers do. They ran toward the problem, or like the firemen. They ran toward the problem. They got kids under wraps. They took them where they needed to be. They got the kid who'd been hurt and put him in the right place so people could take care of that person. And they did it without fear. They were more serious about what's going to happen to the rest of the kids because they didn't know what was going on at first. And so they did what all of us probably will do, ladies included. We're going to try to find out what's going on with our kids in our schools, and we're going to try to get them to safety. And that's what happened there. They took care of it before anybody else got there. Before law enforcement got there, before SWAT got there,
before anybody out there, they had taken care of the situation. So that's why I wanted him to stand, tell him what a hero he is and how much we appreciate him and the folks in this school for what they did. And the rest of the story is, yes, law enforcement in the community and everybody came out, but these guys took care of it first. The way they And hopefully we won't ever have that kind of situation again, because you all are being very vigilant, even though you're in really old buildings in some cases, and it's hard to secure everything. But think about it based on what you know about your building. Every building is different. Think about it. What do we need to do to kind of kick it up as much as we possibly can, so the security, as much as we can possibly get it, is where it needs to be, so that we can take care of our kids. We've got a lot of kids out there who are doing things. But as I said, somebody said they did a hashtag that said, we pass out paper, so we don't pass out nothing. So, we know that they're coming from somewhere though, and they're not coming from us, and we do have to deal with them. So we're a reflection of what happens in society, and yes, Mr. Roller, I'm using my hands. Because that's what I do. But anyway, I'm proud of you, you're doing a great job. Keep taking care of your kids, but also take care of yourselves.
Yes, sir.
I told you before, my daughter's a psychologist, that she says the personal care piece is super important, because she sees her mom not always doing what she needs to do to take care of herself. So you all do that, take care of yourselves, because you have a really hard job, but you're doing a really great job of it, and I'm very pleased with it. And we're moving forward, as we say. We're gonna keep moving. Okay, thank you. Again, thank you for your time, your diligence, your participation, and for all that you do. The elementary principals are dismissed. The secondary principals are here for another presentation. Magnet school principals, except the secondary ones, need to see Ms. White in room D. And I'm gonna grab this for Dr. Julie. If the secondary principals. Secondary principals.
Secondary principals, we're going to go ahead and begin with this part of the conversation.
We have with us Ms. former Mayor Ford, is that correct? That's it, correct? Who is going to provide a presentation, to you.
Well, good morning. Let's give the superintendent and all of you, give yourselves a round of applause. Montgomery, forward. Your school system, we're very proud of all of you, and thank you, Madam Superintendent, for allowing us to come again. We have Mr. Rob Lake, who is the founder of the Five Network, and Mr. John Cerrone, who is a longtime associate from EverFi. They are here to make a special presentation centered around mentoring through high technology. So how many principals we have here now? The principals, okay. And all of the 5 schools are represented? Okay, well, help me give Rob Lake and his colleague, John, another good old Alabama welcome. They're providing a service at no cost to the school systems of Alabama. So come forward, John. Rob.
Is it all right if we actually just sit together and great? That would be great. Maybe we can move a couple of tables because it's actually not even a certainly not a PowerPoint presentation. Superintendent, Brian, we can do it again. You want to cover the discussion. I want to hear the questions you have or to get the feedback on the next steps. So, congratulations. So maybe we can get all when did you guys start in the morning? So who, I believe, a few months ago, who was here when I made this presentation? Okay. So, I'll talk maybe 5 minutes or so, explain, explain what we're up to. Any more?
Their nation.
Oh, we have the next. Explain the program and then again get into a dialogue. I can answer any questions about program, the role of schools, how it fits in the life of kids, and then any concerns you might have. So this program that Dr. Ford mentioned is focused on mentoring, and we all know the importance of mentoring for all of us. Actually, I have a mentor. I meet with him once a week. Doesn't matter where he is in the world. We talk through FaceTime, we talk on the phone, we text. We're a really close relationship for me. It's especially important, as you know, for young people. And the 2 biggest impediments to mentoring actually growing at scale and mentoring being available for students across the country. Number 1 is time. We all as adults are super busy and it's hard to even give an hour a week. But number 2 are actually large numbers of role models in small communities, in rural communities. And so with those 2 problems in mind, we said, how can we provide mentoring for all kids? And how can we provide mentoring for kids with role models who actually can make a really important impact in their life? So we said, let's build a technology platform that will connect young people, super smart, especially low-income kids, especially low-income kids of color, connect them to influential mentors. So